Omnia Pro gives you the confidence to eliminate dead water on thousands of lakes across the U.S. Exclusively through Omnia, utilize our map layers containing critical real-time satellite information to see water temperature, water clarity, and important weather data all in one place, along with 1-foot contours for navionics and detailed CMAP social mapping. Matched with Omnia's industry-leading loyalty credit program on all your tackle and gear needs, this is the only app you need in your arsenal for success on the water.
Good morning and welcome to a special Friday edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. And it is the return of Guide Day. My goal going into this season was to average one Guide Day a month, and we are already, I believe, to Guide Day number 13, kind of a one-off look of a show that dives into the world of guiding. You know, there's a lot of professional bass anglers that also make a living guiding across the country. Also, some of the most interesting people that I've met in my travels across the country are guys who get paid to put other people on the fish of a lifetime, whether it's just to experience a trip, a bucket list trip, a trip with buddies, to learn a new technique. It's really an exploding world, and I couldn't be happier with the feedback that I've received. A lot of the guides that have been featured on Guide Day talk about how the BTL listeners and viewers have followed through, have had great trips. I've always encouraged listeners who have taken part and booked guides from Guide Day to give me feedback, good, bad, and different. I want to make sure that I'm putting out good quality content. Most of the guys that I know personally, today is a little bit of a unique show. We're filming it on a Monday, so 3-4 days before it actually airs, but a lot going on in the world of bass fishing, and our guest today has pretty much been a part of the guiding scene and the tackle scene and the tech scene and all sorts of stuff across the industry. We've had him on BTL before when he launched, I'll say it, a controversial website called Fish Tips, but also an innovative website called Fish Tips that's gotten a lot of press, a lot of publicity, and a lot of professional anglers, both professional anglers who guide, professional anglers who don't guide, some of the top names in the industry on Fish Tips. That is Austin Neary, who we might have our first BTL guest from a coffee shop, right? That's very progressive of you, Austin.
Dude, not freaking where I want to be. That's for sure. I want to be on the water, but yeah, my life looks a little different now since exiting Dreamcatcher Guides, my guide business that I started in college, and all in with this Fish Tips startup. And then, yeah, so now I'm behind a computer for honestly like 3 or 4 days a week, and then Saturday I get on the water, and then I'm back in the office. And my wife and I were living on the road in a fifth wheel. I'm trying to figure out Starlink internet and everything else, and coffee shops are the most reliable internet. So not exactly where I want to be, but where I have to be.
Is Starlink Elon Musk's deal?
Heck yeah, dude. I'm trying to get
I think we just had who was I just talking with about that? I just had a show where someone had, I think it was Matt Steffen. He got Starlink and his internet. He had like a little basement prison deal going on for a while with his internet service. And then they got Starlink, and he's amazing. Have you ever seen it actually?
Well, I will say this. When I was a little kid, I used to look up at the stars at night, and it was like really rare to see a satellite. You know, you look for shooting stars on clear nights, and you'd see something that like would go by slow but light. And I'm like, oh, what is that, Dad? And Dad was like, dude, that's a satellite. Well, now if you're like out in rural America and look up in the sky, it's nothing but satellites. Yeah, seriously.
It is. It's crazy. I was just up in Canada a couple weeks ago and looked up, and it is amazing how much stuff is moving at a rapid pace across the sky when you don't see any light pollution.
Yeah, my parents, they live in like backwoods, Western North Carolina now, close to where Dreamcatcher Fishing Supply, my former business was. And dude, they're like, we have no internet option. We have nothing. They got Starlink. And my dad's like, dude, I can stream like 100 movies at once, upload YouTube. I could do everything. So Starlink's apparently the deal.
All right, you talked a little bit about what was going on. Like I said, I could bring you in because you've done a million different things in this industry. For those who haven't seen the original BTL, we kind of talked about your backstory last year. You can search that up on YouTube, but in like a little 2 or 3 minute synopsis, start on how you started in this, all the things that you've done, and then let's start with the guiding, because you called me. I was very interested. You said, hey, dude, you go, I think I need to be on Guide Day. And I said, okay. And you're talking and you go, and I just sold my guide business.
Yeah.
And I said, wait, now what? And you're like, I love Guide Day. I love what it's about, but this is an aspect that I think needs to be covered in. And I was like, yeah, that's freaking interesting. And then who knows where we'll go from there, where we'll spider web. But talk a little bit about how you got into the guiding, what you did, and then what caused you to sell it.
Yeah. So immediately I think about my dad. Always, when I was a younger boy, he was like, man, when I retire, I want to be a fishing guide. And I'm like, man, it just sounded so cool being on the water all the time, getting to fish, whatever. Well, I ended up starting Dreamcatcher Guides in college. I'm like, hey, if I can be a guide at an early age, maybe I can, retire. So I started Dreamcatcher Guides as a sophomore in college. I went to Western Carolina University, did the whole college deal, almost qualified for the Classic through the college fishing deal, started the team, started my guide business, started my tackle shop, everything. And that was at the very beginning of really this content explosion. So I created a YouTube channel that was Dreamcatcher Guides, and really just created very niche market content so people would find me. But we have so many lakes in Western North Carolina: Glenville, Bear, Fontana, Chattooga, Burton, Hiwassee. I mean, you could just name them forever, but there was no lake fishing guide service. So I started a lake fishing guide service after I got hurt playing baseball. It exploded. My next biggest expense was tackle outside of fuel. I didn't really see, I wanted to start a convenience store, gas station, and tackle shop, but there was really no opportunity for that. But there was an opportunity to start a tackle shop. So started doing that. But a bulk of my market was the tourism industry. So, when you think about destination lakes, like, dude, Gunnersville supports like 20 full-time guides. Lake Fork supports like 40 full-time guides. Okeechobee supports 25 full-time guides. Like, that wasn't our scene, because it wasn't like hardcore bass fishermen going to the mountains of Western North Carolina for amazing bass fishing. Now we have great fishing. We've got 4 or 5 pound, occasionally a 6 pound smallmouth. In a decade of guiding, we've caught 3 double digits on big swim baits and other stuff. But it's not like one of these fishing destinations. It's tourism. And for me, I was like, holy cow, there's so many Airbnbs on all these lakes. Everybody and their mama, comes to the mountain, they're staying on the lake. They only take the kids tubing 2 or 3 days. And they're like, I don't want to tube anymore. What's there to do? So my market was the tourists coming to Western North Carolina. And then we had the tackle shop to play into the locals who love to fish. Because I tell people in rural America, there's only a few things to do, right? There's you fish, you hunt, you have sex, you hike, and you smoke meth. like
Lord. Fair enough.
So it's like everyone's gonna fish and hunt if they're productive in society. But anyway, so no, we had a great business there, and we ran that for a long time. And then one of my customers, and dude, as a guide, tackle shop owner, content creator, zoom in right there, southwest of Asheville, north, so like Lake Jocassee, right above Lake Kiwi.
All these lakes right in here.
Every single one of them, dude.
Wow, I didn't realize that was. Yeah, there are a ton of lakes right there.
Oh my gosh! And dude,
this is Hartwell right down here. For those, Hartwell is
Kiwi,
the capital of the world now. But look at all those lakes in Western North Carolina.
Yeah, there's Chattooga right there at Hayesville, Hiwassee right there, where the Bassmaster Angler of the Year event was. There's Manhattan Lake, Fontana Lake. We finished second in the Fontana Classic this year, but all those lakes, those are all my home lakes.
Okay, just giving people a little bit there. So back to the story.
Yeah, dude. So where we were, it's a vacation destination. It's the mountains. People escape the summer heat to go to the mountains. And that was my deal. So it wasn't a hardcore bass fishing scene, but yeah, dude, I guided there for a decade. I ran an awesome tackle shop. Had my YouTube channel's not huge, but it's 20,000 subscribers or so. But, what I would say is I made it in the industry. I've had a great living. My wife and I had done well enough to get into some real estate investments and everything. But, they're going to be revamping that website. I know Dreamcatchers, the fellow who just bought Dreamcatchers, he's going to be revamping, doing a lot of online sales.
We jumped ahead there.
Yeah.
We jumped ahead. So you're 10 years in, you've got this thing dialed in, you've got all the fisheries, YouTube, you're rolling.
Yeah. And people, always hit me up, blowing me up for info. And I'm like, man, guides just get destroyed. I was even listening to the last guide day when you were talking to Smallmouth Crush, my boy Travis Manson. You're like, dude, when I went up to Ontario, I was blowing you up for help and everything. And I was like, that's exactly right. Like, guides get destroyed for information, which
disclaimer, he's like one of my best friends, so I have no problem. No problem shaking him down.
No doubt. And we'll get into all that. But that's exactly right. Guides get just destroyed for info. And I'm like, I wonder if there is a market where guides can scale their business. Because here's the deal, dude. I had 3 full-time guides salaried working for me. We did 350 to 450 trips a year. Those guides would also work in our tackle shop. They would also service boats. They would do a lot of things. But, it's a beast, the whole deal of it. But I was like, hey, can guides make extra money scaling their business by providing digital guiding services, just like, hey, this is how I would guide you and so forth. So that was the birth of Fish Tips. And we're just working, getting that booger off the ground. So that's where
that was what, 2 years ago that 2.5 years ago that it
year and a half ago. Yeah.
Okay. So it's only been a year and a half. Yeah.
Yep.
And you've got some of the biggest names on board there. And then, and we talked about in the last one, you like kind of vet it, whether you're a guide, whether you're angler, an average angler, a professional angler, all that. And then it goes up on the fishtips.com. They can pick how many they want, the price for it, whatever. And basic, I mean, you're buying information, but you're basing it off of, hey, this is info that is valuable because of the people that have gathered it. So it's like a revenue stream that would have existed through guiding anyway. It's just taking advantage of the technology available today.
To give it a comparison, I thought about it the other day. It's like personal training at a gym, right? You pay a personal trainer and he will personal train you. But what if the personal trainer's so booked up? Well, he can provide a digital, hey, this is how I would personal train you. Here's the reps. Here's everything. Here's how I would do it and so forth. And there you go. There's the YouTube channel. So pretty good.
All right. So you've got this thing rolling. You've got 3-4 guides, the tackle store, you launch Fish Tips. And then this is where you approached me for Guide Day. And you said, hey man, I want to come on and talk about why I sold the guide business.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm all in on that because why did you sell the guide business?
Yeah. So as a co-founder of Fish Tips and, startup companies, I mean, you would know not that Bass Talk Live is a startup, but you would know just being a solopreneur, entrepreneur, dude, it's a lot of mental capacity. Well, I've got to the point where I'm like, man, I personally only have so much bandwidth for guiding and running dream catchers. And I only have so much bandwidth with Fish Tips. I personally thought Fish Tips was the more scalable business, but then I really got to thinking about guides in general. And dude, Kanye West, I don't know, can you quote Kanye West on a Bass Talk Live?
Can you quote whoever you want?
So he got just beat up by the media talking about how a lot of people create slavery for themselves. And I think a lot of fishing guides are like, man, this is the deal. I want to be a guide. I want to be on the water all the time. And dude, they're like, holy cow. After a few years, like, dude, we did it for a decade. I personally would knock out 200 trips a year. You get destroyed, man, like just physically, mentally. I know you said you're 4 for 4 on providing amazing guide trips. I encourage you to guide on some lakes with tourists where you're 0 for 8 or 0 for 9 in a row. And you're wondering, what am I doing? And here's the deal, dude. My dad said this a couple weeks ago. He said, Austin, everything's a headache. It's just about what headaches you want to manage. And anyways, I had got to the point where I'm like, look, this was a great stepping stone business for me. And, but ultimately, most guides don't create businesses for themselves. They create jobs. So for me, I'm like, how do you, my whole heart behind guides, I can run the numbers and tell how much money a guide makes. Dude, run the numbers. It's 200 trips a year. If you're humping it, call it 250. You've got to be crushing it. 250 trips a year. Dude, yeah, times $500. All right, so let's just for easy math, 200 times 500 is 100,000. Let's say you get a $50 on average tip. There's another 10,000, but then take out all your expenses and everything. I'm like, dude, fishing guides are not crushing it by any means. Maybe you have a sugar mama. It's like 70,000 if you run the numbers. Mm-hmm. But maybe you have a sugar mama. Maybe she's a doctor. Like I think Smallmouth's Crush Wife's a doctor, by the way, which I need some of that in my life. But anyways, like it's a grind of a deal. And so my whole heart is I've always been passionate about business, but I've always been passionate about how do I help guides scale their businesses? How do I help them with their marketing? How do I help them with their business strategy? How do I help them with revenue streams? And that's where my heart is. And so that's where, I'm at now. It's like, dude, I'm so like, I talk to a dozen guides a day from across the country because of the Fish Tips platform. And I'm always trying to help them with business strategy, developing websites, content production, so many things. And that's what we're doing now. Molly and I are on the road helping guides create content for both Fish Tips and their social media platforms, and really just trying to help guides go to the next level and able to scale their business.
Let's talk about burnout, because I've done 13. This is the 13th episode of Guide Day. And obviously I pick guides, A, that I personally know, B, that come highly recommended, and C, most of them have a hybrid, a unique thing. I'm not going to pick a burned out guy who I know is going to do the same thing day after. That's how they end up on Guide Day is, hey, this is something where you get out with a passionate guy who's all in on it. I just talked to JP, big JP, who is up, he guides with Travis up there, and he's like, man, he's like, I thought I totally blew it. I had some BTL guys in, and he goes, I ended up like yelling at a guy because he had like let his mental guard down, and I wanted to get him a 6-pounder, and then he broke one off, and then I said, in Big JP's boat, we pay attention all the time. And he's like, I thought that and then it was bad. And he's like, and then that guy snapped back, and he's like, hey, we're here to have fun. And then JP's like, no, we're here to catch giant smallmouth. And then he said afterwards, the guy frickin' booked 3 more days immediately. And then that guy, unbeknownst, messaged me and said, bro, thanks for hooking me up with JP. I've never had a guy that was more passionate and work. But that being said, burnout is a massive issue in the guiding community. And I know a lot of professional anglers who have, it's almost like I don't want to say a drug, but it's like a crutch for them, because they want to get out of the guiding because they don't enjoy it, but they keep going back to it because it's so familiar and it's such a safe form of income for them. But they're saying, man, I got to get out of this. We saw that with like Jacob Fouts a little bit last year when he kind of went through his thing where he was like, he kind of got a lot of flack, I think, for saying that he hated guiding in a roundabout way, but I understood what he mean. He didn't mean he hated guiding. I think he hated the grind and the mental and the burnout for it. What percentage of guides that do this would you say struggle with burnout?
I would say 95% of them do. And I don't even think it's like, it's not that it's bad that they get burned out, dude. It's just like I was talking to Milliken. Ben's a great friend of mine. We were talking about this the other day, and I was like, it's such and hear me out, I'm going on a little tangent, but fishing is a super selfish lifestyle, because here I am as a guide. I wake up at 5, I prep my boat, rig some tackle, I go out, provide the trip until noon, 1 o'clock. I come home, I've got to re-rig up again, I've got to clean the boat, I've got to get ready for the next day. My mental energy is still spent, okay, the fish did this today, there's this weather coming in. I'm on my phone checking the weather. My wife's like, what are you doing? I'm checking the weather every hour, to see what the weather's going to do tomorrow. I go to bed tired. I don't have a lot of energy for my kids, and then do it over again and do that for 10 years. Like, dude, it's a freaking lot. So, I would say a lot of them do. And that's where I'm like, how do we scale business? How do we create other forms of revenue to like, hey, take an off day, go hang out with your son, go to your son's baseball game and be present, dude, it's just an absolute grind day in, day out. But you would know, how many pro fishermen get burned out after a few tournaments in a row, especially a couple hard tournaments in a row, a tough season. Yeah, but a professional tournament, if you're just doing the tournaments at the top level, you're talking 12, guys who fish both tours back in the day or stuff, you're talking 12 to 15 weeks out of the year. Like for the guide, you're talking 52 stacking and stacking and stacking on top of it. I pulled it up. I wondered what burnout was defined as in the dictionary. It's physical, emotional, or mental exhaustion accompanied by decreased motivation, lowered performance, and negative attitudes towards oneself or others. And the thing about guiding, particularly bass fishing, in my opinion, what you talked about is the off the water prep to stay on top of your game. I'm not saying that other species are easier, but there are species that you can guide for where you have other captains that help you stay on the fish, where you're doing the exact same technique day after the day, where you have schools of fish that are going to be in the same location for 3 to 5 months at a time, depending on the structure and the brush and the network that you have. Bass fishing, particularly with what we talk about on guide, dude, it is a mental grind, because you're basically fishing a tournament every day. And
everyone's coming in with such high
You
expectations.
have different skill levels. I always tell people too, there's a bite that I think is the top echelon bite, like how I would win a tournament. That's this bite. And maybe the skill level, it doesn't really matter what it is, but then the skill level of my customers here. So every day I'm having to build a bridge between their skill level and the top echelon bite that's going on, and obviously you get some people, they watch the YouTube videos and they're like, man, you guys smashed them. And it's like, I have spent 9 years to dial in that bite as to the nth degree, and it's still really difficult for me, so then they're 3, 4, 6, 7, 8 fish in a day, and they're like, man, we didn't catch 30. And it's like, well, like that only happens with unbelievable precision casting. And there's so many different factors. And like I said, dude, I'm dealing with tourists, like never mind dudes that have a lot of bass experience, like, a lot of dudes are. So
now on the flip side, there are those moments, and I've hear the guides talk about it, when they drinking beer at night that are fishing the terms. So like, dude, I had this one, I didn't think there was, and where when it comes together and you see someone catch the fish of a lifetime or their personal best, or they completely lose their mind in a positive way where you guys are high-fiving, is that from a guide's perspective, the dopamine hit, the adrenaline rush when you are responsible for someone else making a core lifelong memory that keeps a lot of guides hooked on this thing and putting up with this grind?
That is 100% it. Like it is. It's kind of like you are kind of, dude, you can't tell me that fishermen aren't addicts. We are like hardcore fishermen. We are 100% addicts. We love it. And so, I mean, I think of like a few trips this year. I had a kid, he was burning a fluke on a seawall, dude, and like slow sip, 6 3/4 pound largemouth, slow sips of soft jerk bait. I don't know, 6, 8 foot from the bow, 6 3/4 pounds. He's fighting. It's the biggest fish of his life. I was teaching him how to set the hook, teaching him how to reel, teaching him how to work a fluke. And I mean, dude, I remember catching it and just like, he was like I just got chills, man. Like it was so amazing. But like, yes, that keeps you going from trip to trip. I took my wife out right before we hit the road. She freaking caught a 4 and change pound smallmouth on a top water. And that's the stuff that, like, dude, that's what does keep you coming back. But you usually know pretty quick in the day, like, we don't have a chance. and you're trying to, like the definition said, you're trying to keep a positive attitude and keep it rolling, man. But it's easy to come off the rails at times.
I just had my uncle up in Canada, and he's from New Orleans, and it's a family lake that we've gone to 50, 60 years. But I mean, the last time we fished was 12 years ago. So we're talking Zebco 33 and a Rapala G11. And I was trying to figure out, like, okay, so like, casting, that stuff, it's middle of summer. I'd never been to that lake that late in the year. A lot of the fish were deeper. So I was like sitting there thinking, and we were I had him trolling that Rapala G11. So the little thing on your trolling motor, the constant on that always tries to kill you twice a day in tournaments. Like you always hit it when you're behind a dock or when you're headed towards something, tosses you out of the boat, and then you like curse the engineer that put it right there. Finally found a reason for it. So I could set that thing at 1.8 miles an hour. I was standing on the front and I would be casting a spook or a jerk bait or something, just burn him cast while he trolled that G. Dude, every time he goes, there's one on the Zebco, and just and he'd reel, and you see the smallmouth jumping behind the boat. Like I would get so much more excited when he hooked up trolling, sitting down in the seat there, than I would when a 4-pounder was crushing a spook. And that's the feeling that you can't really describe to anyone when you're you're bringing joy to someone else.
When you're new in the sport, I remember, like, dude, my dad had caught like 3 or 4 double digits before I ever did. And I was like so jealous and angry, like, I want to catch that fish, but after you fish for so long and you get to experience a lot of those things, there is something about, like, you hear old timers all the time. They're like, I don't care about big deer. I want to put my grandkid on a deer. I want to put my friend on a big deer, whatever. And there's something about passing on the tradition, and it's really unique. I listened to Captain Ronnie Kelly, and Ben was on Baxter the Baitman's podcast the other night, and Captain Ron, they were talking about, is bass fishing a sport? And I agree, there is some aspects of bass fishing that are a sport, but ultimately it is a conservative tradition that we are meant to pass down. So as a guide, that is our job. Our job is to traditionally passed down that love for the outdoors, the love for the fish. And so when we do that successfully in a way that's meaningful and engaging, dude, it's super fulfilling because we're doing something that's bigger than ourselves. I always say a life lived for self is extremely selfish. Like you cannot, there's no contentment for a selfish heart. And a guide, really, a good guide, their heart is to let others experience this joy that they get to experience on a day in, day out basis. So yeah, man, that's what it's all about. And that's where kind of my heart has been for the better part of about 6-7 years, I'd say.
So was it a tough decision to sell Dreamcatchers and kind of pivot and focus on kind of this new venture, or was it something that was an easy decision?
Well, so I mean, dude, I cried, to be 100% honest. I mean, I look at my life, and when I started the business, I'm not kidding when I tell you my wife and I were married and had $14 to our name, $14.83. And I really just used my passion, my God-given passion for fishing and guiding to grow a really substantial guide business.
And your people skills. You got good people skills.
Yeah. Praise the Lord. And, but it's like, I was able to, grow that business to the point I did. And I was like, I had gotten to the point where I'm like, hey, I've grown this business as much as I can. There needs to be another kind of young guy with a little bit of piss and vinegar, some moxie that wants to take it to the next level. And I had just got to the point where I was just kind of like, I don't want to invest any more mental energy in it. And then the other thing is like, if you look at it like, church leadership or something, like for me, you have like, there's pastors have leaders, right? Pastors, they have their flock of people they try to, they love on or whatever. But like now I'm like trying to encourage guides and trying to help guides. So I'm still able to do that in a capacity, not necessarily with like people who I'm introducing to the sport or people who are, one-off, but I'm helping guides who are, growing their businesses that are pouring into more people. So it's still super fulfilling. And but it was hard, dude. I freaking cried, man. Like we tried to add up how many casts I made. I mean, yeah, any fisherman can do this, but I'm like, okay, if I do like 6 casts a minute for an hour, I'm on the water for 6 hours a day. I'm on the water 300 days a year, dude. I added it up. It was like 3.5 million casts or something like that. And obviously I wasn't making all those casts with customers and whatnot, man, but dude, it was a lot of time I'd been on the water. A lot of memories made. Some of my greatest friends are people I've guided. And yeah, dude. So it was tough, but I'm like, I don't know, man. There's like this piece in me that was like, hey, this is as far as you're taking this bad boy. It's time to go on to the next thing. And that's where I'm at personally.
All right, you talked a little bit about getting new blood people into it. I would love to get your opinion right now in 2024. A lot of technology going on, a lot of things happening in the industry. Is it a good time right now? Is it easy, difficult for new guides, for guides who are wanting to get into this, to make a name for themselves? What are some of the struggles that breaking into the guiding business specifically on the bass side, largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass? I mean, I know I've done saltwater and all sorts of different stuff. And then what are some of the opportunities that are now presenting themselves for new guides that possibly weren't there even 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, so let's start with the ease of entry. I do think the ease of entry to become a guide is pretty easy. Like I always tell people, like if you start a guide business and you have a moderately decent network of people, there's your mom and dad know enough people to book a few trips and whatever, like you're going to book some trips. Now, creating a sustainable business and a marketing machine and creating a true content production model that drives eyeballs, that drive, because everything's a funnel, right? You want to get people to the top of the funnel and it funnels down to sales or, taking people out on the trip. Like creating that is an absolute beast. And I would say in 2024, it is more difficult to create that. And I think that's just across the board with capitalism and innovation. So like, dude, there's a kid, I'm going to give him some love. Austin Pembroke, right? Pendleton. I just talked to him the other day. He guides on Ivy. He guides on OH Ivy. Austin Pemberton. He fishes, I think maybe one of the NMLF series. dude, he guides on Ivy. He's literally caught 50 double digits this year. He's caught fish just like Josh Jones. I love Josh. Talked to Josh literally a few days ago, just like Kyle Hall. I love Kyle. Talked to Kyle literally yesterday. But he's like, dude, I don't get any love. Like, I don't, because we have such a saturated content market. His stuff does not get seen. Like, even with YouTube, bro, like, I mean, I feel like the content I put out's off the chain good. I only have 20,000 subscribers. And I think it's really hard in this day and age of content production to be seen because it's such a saturated market. There's so many people that post giant bass on YouTube, so many people that post giant bass on Instagram. But I do think there is a solution for that in some kind of regard, which I want to get into further. So
we'll get into it then.
All right. So the reason why I think I was very successful, and I have what I call the recipe for making it in the fishing industry. Now, when you think fishing industry, you might think national or even global, like, hey, this is the fishing industry. But the reality is it's already very parceled out. But the idea is you have to stay local. You have to stay consistent. So the reason why my business grew so well is a lot of the content I created was niche market. For years, the only videos I would put out, and dude, I got a lot of people that maybe locals that didn't like me for it, but I would say fishing guide Lake Glenville, because when Google bought YouTube became a predominant algorithm for search engines. So I was like, if someone searches fishing lake in any of the lakes I'm on, Google is going to want to send them to YouTube because Google wants to monetize ad revenue through content. So what I did was I started creating YouTube videos like Fishing Guide Lake Jocassee. Well, here's the deal. It drew a ton of eyeballs to my videos, which drove a lot of phone calls to people who wanted guide trips. So a lot of people, they might, try to create national level content or like even tournament content. But the reality is if you stay local and drive home your home bodies of water, your niche markets, and become an expert on that, dude, people locally will hold you as the expert. And then all of a sudden, just word of mouth and everything else that tends to happen when you become an expert in your specific field or niche, people regard you as high, and then that's when everything kind of starts to flywheel, but it compounds. So like I encourage any guide. They're like, man, where do I start? I always say, dude, don't think about growing a huge YouTube channel. Think about creating a niche YouTube channel in a niche market, like hashtag all your lakes. And some people are going to be like, oh, you're blowing it up. I'm like, dude, it's 2024. So many people own boats. So much information's out there. You're not blowing anything up. But that's the way to do it. There's a old saying that niche is rich. And that is where like I encourage guys, like pick a niche market, whether it's your local market or whatever, and just stay there and stay home. So
the show survives because it's a niche market. I mean, the diehard hardcore bass fishing. If I was trying to compare the numbers of BTL to a national podcast, now we're not going to go like Joe Rogan or anything, but even like a Meat Eater. With that, like this is so niche, but because it's niche, you also have a lot of personal interaction and a lot of trackable feedback for the sponsors, because you're dealing with such a passionate fan base, and we all support each other. So that's why it works. So I 100% understand.
There's some great guides. So at this point, I do think you can fish the tournament scene when you're niche, but like, dude, I'm telling you, the guys. So like Emil Wagner, a really good friend of mine. He's awesome.
He's going to be on the Elite Series here in a couple weeks.
He is going to,
he ain't going to miss on Hartwell.
he sent me a crying emoji after Santee. And I'm like, dude, you're like, okay, you bombed. And he's like, it was a double bomb. I'm like, you're going to finish top 10 and everything else. You'll qualify anyways. But Emil, for a long time, like this is the recipe, dude. You guide on your home lake. You stayed super dialed in with those fish. When big tournaments come into town, you finish really well in them. So you get these slugs of $5,000 to $10,000 on any weekend when you win on your local bodies of water. Then you guide Monday through Friday again. You win these tournaments. And dude, I mean, I know a bunch of guides, Wyatt Frankens and Shane Campbell. They're on Toledo Bend. They just won the Brandon Bell Team of the Year. Really good friends, but dude, that's the deal. You stay home, you get really good on your home bodies of water or your niche, 10 bodies of water, whatever. You fish tournaments on those bodies of water that can provide, big slugs of cash, but you just day in, day out grind. And dude, that's the way to do it. I mean, like, you start running the numbers on that, and guides, fishing guides that can do that recipe are making more than most pro anglers are on tour.
The other thing that I'll notice about fishing guides, fishing large regional tournaments, they either have top 10 bags or they don't weigh in. You ever notice that, Austin?
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
the worst thing you could have if you're a guide on that is to have an 85th place with 4 for 9 pounds. You either want to have 0 or a 23-pound bag. And the smart guides that I know, even if they're might cash a low check, they'll dump their fish if they're not in a top 10, just because they know that that is a great marketing tool for them going forward and what their primary stream of revenue is, which is guiding.
Yeah. There's some guys that do put a lot of stock in that, but yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. That's exactly what happens. And honestly, most guides will tell you they don't even enter the tournament unless they know they're going to freaking back their eyeballs in.
So your second thing there, your recipe for success, you said consistency. That's something that you're really good at, but is that something that I think a lot of guides struggle with? Almost just like this explosion in podcasting, where there's certain platforms that make it extremely easy, but the biggest thing that all of everything struggle, consistency. Same thing in the guiding world.
So one of my really good friends, Cam Lanier, founder of T-Mobile, he was a guide customer of mine. I asked Cam, I said, Cam, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm just an investor. I said, oh, what do you invest in? He goes, telecommunications. I said, well, how'd you get into that? He goes, my grandfather was the money man behind Alexander Graham Bell with the telephone. and I'm like, oh, well, okay. So I look him up, and Cam actually passed away a couple months ago. Super sad. Business mentor of mine, great friend. But he told me super on early in my guide career. He said, son, the key to success is consistency. And when you are, as a guide, you're a solopreneur. You are you're the manager, you're the salesman, you're the service provider. But the deal is, like, you have to stay consistent. And that's what I was training the guy who just took over Dreamcatchers. Like, dude, you have to put up posts consistently. You got to do lives consistency. You got to put up pictures consistently. Every email, you just have to be consistent. And then when you look over it over the course of, like, I have a decade, you look back and you're like, holy cow, I built something really special. So without question, that is, unbelievably important. Just being consistent, just keep grinding. I mean, dude, you've been doing this for a long time, and that's why you're, considered one of the best in our industry, right? It's just like the other day, I think I texted you and you're like, hey bro, I'll call you tomorrow. I'm on podcast number 6 of the day. And I was like, dude, I was like, dude, you're an animal. But I'm like, that's what it takes, man. You just have to give your life to it. It takes true life commitment. So
thank you. So niche expertise, consistency. What else for the recipe for success for guiding in 2024?
So I mean, I would say
those are the two main things that you combine.
Those are them at a macro level. At a micro level, there's all those little things that play in.
Yep.
So your home bodies of water. So you have your home bodies of water. You have constant content, and then if you do those at a micro level, the macro looks like, oh, he's in a niche market, but you become the expert in that market, and you can do really well.
All right. The hottest thing going in fishing right now, not from a controversial standpoint, just from a content of what's happening right now, is technology, specifically forward-facing sonar technology. How has that played into the guide game recently? And do you think that's good or bad for the majority of full-time guides out there?
Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword. We talked on the phone a little bit about it. You talked about how you talk to some guides and some of their customers think, man, this dude's a god.
I think they're wizards. They literally think they're wizards, because if you don't understand what you're looking at, and a guy goes, cast right over there, now wiggle it, set the hook. And they're like, wow, this guy is amazing.
Well, I will say, for northern smallmouth, that may be a thing, because, dude, I went up to a certain body of water with Milliken, and there was a smallmouth swimming 3 foot away from the boat. I flipped my little deal at it and caught it. And I'm like, a largemouth in the South? That doesn't happen. That doesn't. So anyways, smallmouth, I do think you have the potential to look like a genius sometimes with the scope. But for me, with my once again, I'm thinking tourism, dude, it is so tough because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I tell people all the time, if I had half the opportunities as a guide that I put my customers on, people would think I was LeBron James or something. Like it's unbelievable. But my customers, I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, there's a school of 5-pounders out there. They're right below a ball of shad, make this precision cast, and they can't do it. And I know that inwardly it feels like defeat to me because they can't execute. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like, because here's the deal. Them holding a 5-pounder is another picture that goes up on my social media, which is 3 more people that book trips because of it. So when I see customers not executing, I look at it as dollar bills that are flowing out from me. So I have to be really cognizant of like, is this person able to execute on these very precision bites or are they not? I'll tell you the truth, 9 times out of 10, live scope made guiding almost like hell for me because on our herring lakes, the fish are always moving. They're always moving. If they're set up in a brush pile, praise the Lord, throw something over them, you're going to get a bite and, we'll just see. But most of the time they're moving. They're so fast and I'm just running around and I just have to tell my people, hey, we're just going to freaking make a bunch of casts in an area. Or not make a bunch of casts on herring lakes. We're going to make a few casts in an area and just roll and just kind of keep them fresh and keep them hidden. But it can be tough, but it also can be rewarding. It's a double-edged sword. But I found it to be hell a lot of the time.
Yeah, I never thought about that. I mean, it would be the same as like a professional bowler taking me and saying, hit it 3 rails and then put it into the pocket, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can't. Like, I can roll it down the middle occasionally, but, you don't have that. And the guys go, well, what do you mean? Blah, blah. If you don't have it, you can't do anything. But I also see where you're like, dude, if you make this cast, the reward, the feedback is going to be astronomical. And it's like, you got the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow there. You just can't go over and pick a couple coins out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, dude, I mean, there's times and there's no obviously secret. The jig head minnow's the deal. And when these big smallmouth spots, whatever, on all of our lakes, I'm like, there's a perfect time when you see their body language, your bait's going down and they kind of canter and, you have to pull it away from them. And I'm like, all right, pull it, stop, pull. And trying to, cause like, I know how to do it and catch them, and just customers are clueless. It can definitely be difficult, but it's all just part of it. And once again, like you go 8 or 9 trips in a row with people who are, I hate to call them clueless. I'm not worried about it. They're not going to watch BTL once again because it's a niche market podcast. But you take enough people who are clueless and you're just like, God, Lord. Now, when you do take someone that's awesome, you usually get crazy weather and the bite's really tough.
Now, I will also say this. The most rewarding experiences that I've had, not officially guiding, is when you have someone that has 0 experience that hooks into that fish. And it's one of the first fish that they've hooked into. And you see the adrenaline coursing through their body, and you see them reeling that 2.5 pounder right up to the tip of your rod going, oh yeah, that thing's about to break, and they're back reeling it. But when they get it in, like, those are also the most rewarding experiences that I've had in the boat, are with people with 0 experience, and you're introducing them to that first, first adrenaline rush as they fight and hit land. And then you got to teach them how to hold it and all that, like the sense of accomplishment, the whole experience. Like, dude, that's the best.
And some of them don't realize, like, for instance, I had a kid out last year. We're on Chattooga. I'm like, these fish were so beat to death. We're like casting a drop shot on scope 100 feet. And I casted for him at this wad of fish that were like low on this brush pile. And I was like, dude, usually when they're sitting real, like on the bottom, they're a spotted bass. Like they're either catfish or they're big bass. Anyways, his line loads up and he sets the hook, and I'm like, or he starts to just reel into him. He didn't know what setting the hook was. Dude, it was a 5'4" spotted bass.
Oh, dude, that makes so much sense.
And listen, I was like, oh my God, it's a freaking giant. Like, this is the biggest spotted bass I've ever seen on Chattooga, like ever, like put my eyes on. And he's just like, oh, cool.
You're like, no, you got to understand, bro. But you just gave up some juice there. That explains a lot. I've spent a lot of time on Hartwell. It's my favorite lake in the country, but the majority of the biggest spotted bass that I've caught on Hartwell were surprise fish.
Yeah. There's something to be
They
said.
weren't floaters. They weren't swimmers. They weren't schoolers. They were what? Oh God! And then
just big old blobs that you're just like, oh, those are the cinder blocks.
They're either catfish or they're big spots.
Or big largemouth. Every once in a while, they're big largemouth.
Interesting. All right. Where do you want to go from here? I've thought this has been exceptionally educational for guides, for people who hire guides, for people who want to know all about this stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to, just guiding. Where's guiding going in the future, right?
Yep.
So that'd be great to talk about. But what we've created at Fish Tips is a awesome platform where guides can scale their business digitally. Because once again, how do you scale as a guide? Dude, you literally are tied to making money on the water. I mean, like my phone literally just buzzed a minute ago. I just sold a tip on Fish Tips. But it's a great opportunity for guides to scale. And dude, I've talked about it with my team. There's like these gatekeepers in the sport of like, oh, there's, information. You can't get information. I'm like, dude, do you know how many fishing license sales there were last year, Matt, in the United States?
I think there's like maybe you and Ken Duke actually know that number.
55 million.
Wow.
All right. So it's like when you think about your niche market of hardcore tournament heads, like, and dude, I saw so much crap when Bass announced the information rule. I mean, there was so many things that went out, and people were like, "Oh, pros are buying their information on Fish Tips." Like, we never created Fish Tips for tournament guys. We created Fish Tips for recreational anglers because, like, based on you guys, how long has Bass Talk Live been around for?
This is the 20th season.
So 20th season, and
20 years.
I'm not knocking you at all, but like you guys have 18,000 or 19,000 subscribers.
That's because you want to know the real story as to why that happened?
Okay, let's talk about it
real quick, then we'll get back to it. When Jeffries ran this, he was all about YouTube views, or all about website views. His entire basis was based on hitting website views. So all of our videos went to Vimeo under private, which were then embedded into basszone.com. Because when that first happened, YouTube was in its early stages. So in 2013 was, I believe, when Rick Clunn was going to win the Bassmaster Elite Series on Falcon Lake, and the tournament was canceled on that day because of wind. That was when the Harlem Shake was big. It had just gotten out. We were rooming with Dean Rojas, me and Dave Rush, who was also working. I got 6-pound test fluorocarbon, Dean's frog box, and we did the Harlem Shake Kermie edition, where we had the frogs that were bouncing, and I'm up here like a puppet master, and Dave's got the camera because we had an off day with nothing to do. We set up the table, the whole thing, and then boom, the frogs were all humping each other and doing the Harlem Shake and all that. So Dave and I create a YouTube channel, Bass Zone YouTube channel. We put it out. The thing gets like 6,000 views, and we get almost 1,000 subscribers in less than 24 hours. Jeffries calls livid. Those are website page views. That should have gone on Vimeo. You need to delete that account immediately. Get rid of that. We'll re-upload it to Vimeo, and then we'll gain all of that by going to basszone.com to show that video.
Yep.
It was a big fight because we were like, YouTube is big. He'll still say this. I could say this because he said that was his biggest regret in the whole run of the business. It wasn't until the end of 17, beginning of 2018 that we actually started a BTL YouTube channel. So it's only like 5.5, 6 years instead of that whole 20 years where if we had gotten it on the front end of it, we're talking like massive numbers.
But I hear you, but what I'm saying is the hardcore bass anglers, the hardcore tournament, I call them the deep staters.
Oh yeah, 12 to 15,000.
Exactly. And the ridiculous thing for me is we created the platform for those guys to be able to, if they wanted to create secondary income for themselves. Like when the pros, dude, when Bass came out with that information thing a couple days ago that they've now since reneged. Everyone was like, oh, the pros are going to Fish Tips. I'm like, dude, go to the tournament schedule where the elites are going. We don't have any supply for any of those lakes besides Hartwell, because I've got a lot of friends that guide there. Like, we don't have that much supply on a lot of those bodies of water. But we created this platform for guides and pros if they want to, because here's the deal, dude. This is what I don't understand. Matt, help me understand this. You ready?
Yes.
A pro will do an after tournament. Hey, this is how I was catching my fish. And they do their thing for their sponsors.
Right.
But someone could go watch Bass Live, and I could zoom in exactly on Bass Live and look at where every boat is fishing on Bassmaster.
in certain instances, yes, but in also certain instances, like, let's say they are doing it on Hartwell, and there is a one cane pile cast or one brush pile that's there or one specific, like, you're not getting that from the Bass Live.
Agreed. But what I'm saying is there is information that everyone is monetizing the pros information except the pros. The pros, the only way they're monetizing it is hopefully selling some jersey deals and some shout outs and making their money on the tournament scene. And it's like, hey, like, there's been other platforms that have paid the pros very minimally for their content and then have made a lot of money for their content. What we've created is a platform for guides and pros to be able to, like, hey, you guys are the content providers of the sport. You should be compensated likewise. So, that's kind of where we're at. And that's where I'm like, the future of guiding. I'm like, I see there's always going to be a need for a guide. Services will never be taken over by AI, but there is a way to utilize technology and digital services as a guide to scale their business.
So you're still in the guiding game. You didn't get out of the guided game. You just pivoted, is kind of what I'm hearing with this.
I love guiding, bro. I mean, I still love guiding. I think I needed more breaks between guiding, but I love guiding. I love everything. Dude, I love people. I love impacting people, So look, John Murray.
Yeah, so I see Trey McKinney on here. John Murray, obviously Milliken made a big splash when he posted
Harkins, NPFL winner.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff out here.
Dude, Gray Buck's selling salmon tips. What?
I know. I saw that. Gray Buck. I just hooked Gray up. They just got back. I just have to talk to him from a trip to Alaska, and they were actually like in the neck of the woods where like my best friend grew up and lives. I played hockey with him at OU,
cool.
And then they got hooked up with that. So he's got the river boat. So it's just like we would go to a lake and dump in and go bass fish. He dumps in the Kenai River and goes, wild rainbow trout fishing. It's like amazing. The coolest experience ever. I know that they went up there and did that thing. I have to figure out. Yeah. John Murray, Destin DeMarion,
dude,
all sorts of, so what percent of the people on Fish Tips who are signed up are like full-time guides who are actually using it to make kind of passive income? And what percent are like, and because I see like some college anglers, I see tournament anglers who don't guide. I see all sorts of different types of people on there.
Yeah, I would say it's probably 50 or 60, 40 or 50, 50. We haven't run the numbers on that exact deal. I could actually, if I called Josh, one of our product guys, he could pull that pretty quick. But yeah, I mean, there's pros that are also guides like John Murray, Jonathan Kelly, Gray Buck doesn't guide, or maybe he does do it a little bit, but Jonathan Kelly, he guides up on Oneida. Andrew Nordby, I know someone just messaged him about booking a trip, but Nordby's not a guide. He's just a content creator, so forth. But yeah, I mean, I'd say it's 50-50 full-time guides and so forth. Will Harkins, he guides in North Georgia, fishes the NPFLs, so it's a good.
Hit me up with this, because this is one of the questions I've had about this so far. So let's just use this for an example. So here's $100, 4-pound plus Champlain smallmouth for Ben Milliken. We all know Ben Milliken grew up in Nebraska. He lives in Texas now. He probably fished the Elite Series up at Champlain. Now he's offering the tips for that. Have you had any issues with guides? So if I'm a guide on Champlain and I've got someone that's going to Champlain that's like, man, we have nowhere to start. Now you've got Ben who just came in for a week selling that tip for 100, or Joe Schmo. It doesn't matter. It literally is the first one that I saw. Is that not taking money out of potential guides' pockets who guide on Champlain, who would then have gotten that trip instead of someone saying, hey, for $100, Ben can put us in the right areas and it shows us the baits and all that. You got a guy going, what the hell? This is my niche. This is what I grew up doing. This is what I should get paid for.
Yeah. So absolutely. So when I have people reach out to me, I get 2 different text messages. I get people that say, hey, what's your schedule? I want to book a trip. And then I get people that say, what were those balloons?
What the heck was that?
I don't know. I'll just try to do it again. Anyways, I get 2 different kinds of calls, right? I get people that say, hey, what's your schedule? I want to book a trip. Or, hey, when are you free? I'm coming up. I don't have a boat. I want to book a trip. And then I have people that say, hey, what are the fish doing? And forever, guess what I did with the people? I said, hey, what are the fish doing? I said, hey, I don't give information. I don't really do that. Do you want to book a trip? No. Or a lot of times I'm already booked up, but it was like, no, I've got my own boat. I have a few hours. I just want to go out. So people who want to book trips, they could say, hey, you're a guide. Let me book a trip. But dude, guides get hit up so much for, hey, what are the fish doing? So I literally asked the guy the other day, I said, do you have these two? I said, these are the two questions. I said, you get hit up for info, or you get people that want to book a trip. He goes, yep. I said, how are you monetizing the people who are hitting you up for info? He says, well, I try to get them to book a trip. I said, well, what percentage of that? He said, I think 1 out of every 10, maybe 1 out of 20. Mm-hmm. So the people that are just wanting info, and dude, there is some kind of dude, I have a lot of opinions about our industry. I think the industry is built on male insecurity. But some people don't want to go out with a guide, but they will discreetly get some info hey, I just want to go out on my own and do this myself. And I don't want to be a man that I'm not competent as a fisherman, or I don't want to feel the shame, but it's hey, I'm willing to Ben put hey, look for isolated rock. Here's some great bays to start in that have decent isolated rock with fish around, and talks about some baits and boat positioning and the real educational finer deals. And that's the thing. Everyone's like, y'all are a waypoint platform. It's we are not a waypoint platform. Or how about this? I'm a guide. Okay, what kind of service would it be if I just showed up to a lake and we just sat the boat down on somewhere and I didn't say anything to anybody? The customer would be like, what are you doing? Yeah. And I'm like, oh, well, this is a waypoint. That's not what Fish Tips is. Fish Tips is an education platform where we use dude, do you know how many customers or fishermen don't know what a secondary point is?
Probably the vast majority.
Channel swing bank. Do you know when you say, hey, they're in the channel swings, dude? Yeah, for you and me, that's just it's nothing. It's just conversation for us, dude. For 49.5 million people, they're clueless and they need hey, this is a channel swing bank. What makes this a channel swing bank? What is isolated rock? What does it mean when you say you're fishing a submerged brush pile? What's it mean when you're fishing a grass line? What do I look for? Dude, so many people don't know what that is. So, a lot of people have.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, just a lot of people have gotten upset about it's selling waypoints. And I'm like, dude, it's so not. And I hear the guys too. I'm like, dude, you guys know how hard is it to catch another person's fish? It's extremely difficult. It takes so much more, decision making, realizing weather conditioning, rising barometric pressure, wind direction, water clarity. There's so many little attributes that go into catching fish.
And I've talked with you about this, and I go round and round. There's also kind of an old school element to this, with just becoming comfortable with it, becoming familiar with it. I mean, let's say I pull that up and I'm going, okay, well, 15 plus areas and waypoints. How do you know you're not also giving up someone else's areas and waypoints so that those get shared and shared and shared, and then it just dilutes the high concentrate? There's all sorts of ways you can go down this. But what I'm also hearing is that this is an excellent companion to full-time guides. Do you have people that are on this platform that make their living 100% selling fish tips, or does everybody that makes their living in the industry use this?
We have probably I'd say almost 12.5 guys that are on pace to make between $10,000 and $15,000 this year.
So it's a complement to what they do professionally.
By the way, if we run the numbers and we say, hey, 200 trips a year at $500 a piece, $100,000 minus expenses, call it $70,000. If you're making an extra $5,000 to $10,000 on top of 70, dude, that's a substantial percentage.
And let me say this too, and this is something that's not talked about, but I do also know that there are a lot of guides regionally, that offer, hey, here's a chip with 30 to 50 waypoints on it. And instead of it being commercially available on that, you Venmo them the money, they send you the chip, and it's literally the exact same thing. And there's a bunch of guys that do that.
Totally. And I think
legally, I'm not even talking tournament scenario whatsoever. Yeah. I'm talking about this just 100% from a guide.
I do want to say one thing. We put out a press release last year because we're a business and abide by laws in the US. We want to uphold integrity and rules. We're like, hey, we want to work with tournament organizations that ban buying and selling information, or I guess it would be buying information for tournament organizations specifically. They can't limit how you make your money, but they can limit how you obtain information in tournaments. But like, hey, we want everybody, because we heard people when JT, which I have a lot of opinions about JT's disqualification, but they're like, oh, he must have been getting on fish tips. I'm like, dude, we didn't have supply for any of the lakes. Like, one, but then two is I don't necessarily think, dude, polygraphs aren't like, they're not always accurate. And if you know JT or ever talk to JT, I love JT. He's a friend of mine. He's not the most socially, he's not a great communicator. No offense, JT, but it's just like I thought that was really bogus. And even still, dude, I'm going to say something else. When did the no information rule go in effect, Matt?
As far as
just in tournaments.
Well, I mean, it's been different over the course of the past 15 years. Are you talking about this past year? I mean, FLW back in it had 2 week, then the Elite Series used to have a 30-day. Okay.
Pros included for 3 decades. So you can look at some of the old school pros on tour. And I'm not saying this is good or bad or anything, but there were years and years and years and years of obtained information, which would now be deemed illegal. So it's like, I'm like, because it's rules now, it's like, oh, this is wrong. But it's like, hey, look, everybody who taught you how to throw a drop shot, Matt? Who taught you what to look for as far as offshore fishing? Like, we all obtain information by different means. And here's another thing, dude, something about the whole information rule that is I have a hard time with across the board. And I just feel for guys. When you talk to your fishing buddies, what do you guys talk about?
Fishing. I was just telling my girlfriend the other day, I was like, man, I've been friends with guys for 15 years. And I swear to God, they mentioned their kids the other day. And I was like, I didn't know he had a kid. And this is a guy that I've like roomed with for a day.
Dude. Okay. So like, for instance, this happened. We're at ICAST, and Jordan Lee and I were talking in the Berkeley booth because he knows I'm on Chattooga and they wolf pack, and he knew that bite ended up going down post tournament. And Jordan says, "Man, what are your favorite wolf pack thing?" Because that's the thing that Dream Catchers was known for. That's the thing I'm known for: hunting wolf pack fish with big swim baits. And
this is after the tournament's over with nothing on the schedule. He's just trying to post tournament, analyze what he did wrong or what maybe he should have known.
I was like, man, I'm a big fan of some big wake baits. And anyways, we talked. Did Jordan Lee get information from me?
Oh, 100%.
Okay. So it's like, guys, our industry is all about, we talk fishing. We do these things. It's like, this isn't bad. This is just part of fishing. So here's the deal. It sucks because there's so many guys. I heard Kyle Patrick in the Zaldane podcast. He's like, which I think he's contradicted himself a couple times, but he did say, he's like, hey, I wish there was no information rules, like let it be a free for all. And then Bass came out with the thing. And then he's like, I think this is disgusting, whatever. But I'm like, I have Major League Baseball friends that I'm like, hey, are there guys using roids right now? And he goes, of course there's guys using roids right now. And I'm like, well, what's your opinion about it? He's like, it sucks. And I wish they weren't, or they just need to just say it's a free for all and let the chips fall where they are. But at the end of the day, dude, what do you want pros to be? Do you want them to be hermits that don't talk to any of their friends on their home bodies of water? Like, dude, you kidding me? The elites coming to Hartwell this year. All of Jake Whitaker's friends and Brandon Cobb's friends are South Carolina boys who on any given day are gonna be like, bro, I won the Hartwell tournament on this, and this. And it's like, it's ridiculous. Like by the way, pull up the schedule. Can you pull up the elite schedule right now?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you how every tournament's going to be won, because this is the information age in 2024. And I've been able to, we're going to look at it.
That'll work. Hold on. Yeah, here we go. Right here.
All right. Let's see. All right. So Palatka, St. John's. I heard someone say, I saw a comment that was like, oh, can you imagine someone, because they had their old rules come out and say, can you imagine someone winning Palatka and it was off someone else's waypoints? Dude, it's February 20th and 23rd in Florida, bed fishing tournament. Let's go to Okeechobee, bed fishing tournament. Let's go to St. Johns, St. John's. I heard someone say, I saw a comment that was like, oh, can you imagine someone, because they had their old rules come out and say, can you imagine someone winning Palatka and it was off someone else's waypoints? Dude, it's February 20th and 23rd in Florida, bed fishing tournament. Okay. March Bassmaster Classic.
And those are two I would like to point out. Those are two where past tournaments where they say, hey, here's John Cox in this slough. Like now, if you've never been there before, you can say, okay, this is where they freaking bed.
Seriously, like, what are we trying to prevent? Okay, so let's look. March 21st, 23rd, Fort Worth, Texas.
That's the classic.
Yep, that's going to be there'll be some scope, but there'll be a lot of fish on beds in March. Yep. Okay, so April 10th, Albemarle Sound.
That's a wild card.
It is a wild card. Let me tell you how it'll be won. It'll be won up shallow with cypress trees. I would say you look for primary cypress trees on points. There's a little bit of grass mixed in, okay, but it's going to be won. You could power fish those fish, but it'll be one with some worms too. All right, Lake Hartwell, April. It's going to be a herring spawn deal with some fish on beds. You can look at primary points and secondary points. Any hump, any shoal, anything has brush on it. There's going to be fish, herring spawning on. Like, what are we doing? It's so yeah. May 8th, it's going to be still a shad spawn, and at Lake Fork, fish are going to be scoping.
Sabine is just going to be, dear God, I hope I have a bite.
It's going to be, let's attack. Dude, think about Brock Mosley. How many people are going to be fishing around Brock Mosley's deal?
Yeah, I mean, that's the same way it always is on the Sabine.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, guys, what are we?
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here, Austin. Okay. What about the concept that as you're in this industry and as you become a pro angler and respected and you do things the right way and you put your time and your energy and you sacrifice your relationships and your finances to chase this dream, that you earn a right to this legal information. You earn a right prior to the cutoff to call your buddy who's also put in 20 years on Gunnersville and you say, hey man, what do you think it's going to be? And he says, because he trusts you and because you've put that time, work, and effort into, he says, hey man, I like this section of the lake, depending on how the grass sets up, and you want to make sure you put a punch skirt on because that's what imitates the bluegill. What do you say? Because this is what I struggle with, right? Mm-hmm. To then you can just go and you can obtain this information without putting in the time, because I've heard the younger guys go, well, yeah, we're going to do this because we don't have access. We don't have the network that the older guys do. And I want to say, you're damn straight you don't. But guess what? You do things right and you will in 10 years.
Yeah. So is
that fair?
Totally fair, but we live in a just a changing world. We live in the information age. This is the whole thing about the live scope. Like, did live scope level the playing field, or did live scope tilt the playing field with technology over knowledge and mm-hmm. patterns? Like, dude, this is just I don't know how else to say it. This is just the world we live in, dude. And here's the deal: your heroes in fishing are my heroes in fishing. I look up to the same guys you do. I get to work around these guys. I get to talk to these guys. I love these guys. I respect them. They will always be regarded to me as above anyone in my generation, except maybe, I don't know. I'm not going to blow his head up. I'm good friends with him. Patrick Walters, he's on Fish Tips too. But it's like, Pollen, all these guys, dude, I look up to these dudes, man. It's amazing. And they have cut their teeth and they've grinded and they have earned the right to a lot of that stuff. But at the same time, like, dude, you just do a little research. There's YouTube channels on every lake, people talking about every body of water, everything. And here's the deal, back to your deal. Not every recreational fisherman, tournament pro, whatever, tournament pros do have those networks, but recreational anglers, that's where I care about. Because once again, that's 49 million people. Yeah. Like, once again, if like I keep going back to like what truly moves the needle in this industry, like what do you think Rapala makes more off of sales at Walmart to recreational anglers or to hardcore bass fishermen?
Oh, recreational anglers, without a doubt.
Not even close, dude. And
I didn't realize this. Underneath the schedule, before the schedule on Bassmaster, it has a paragraph on how each tournament will be won. So like the Hartwell one says, when the Elite Series visits, they will likely find the spawn in full swing, setting up a stage for a shallow water battle. There's a little paragraph on each one. The largemouth should congregate in the canals and small tributaries that enter the sound, with which warm significantly faster than the main river channel to create the perfect place to kick off the spawn. That's the Albemarle Sound and the Pasca Twonka Tank River.
All right, so can I So this proves my point, by the way. So can I bring up another quick
Yeah,
thing?
you talk about whatever you want, man.
All right. So the other day we're talking with Google about search engine optimization. Okay, Matt. So did you know there's 1.5 million people that search phishing reports per month in the United States? 1.5 million people search phishing reports monthly. All right. So listen, we're on the phone with this Google lady, and she goes, is fishing kind of like golf? And then I'm like, here's the deal. This is what we do. She goes and does her own research. She comes back and she goes, I figured it out. People watch golf to be entertained. People watch fishing to learn how to fish.
Yeah, that's fair. 100%.
Okay. So our sport is based on education and information. Like, people watch golf because it's entertaining, or baseball because it's entertaining, whatever. People watch fishing to learn how to fish. What we do is a passing of the torch of information, because once again, it is a conservative tradition that has been passed down from years and years. And this is what we do. Like, there's ways to do it more efficiently and more effectively, and those are passed down to the next generation. That is just what fishing is. People don't, I mean, I do like it. I like watching it for entertainment value.
Yeah, I mean, there's a thriving guide business of strictly, hey, we're not out here to catch fish. I'm out here to teach you, so you become a better angler. Whether it's electronics, whether it's a technique, whether it's breaking down a lake. I mean, that is probably the biggest growing factor in guiding, from what I've seen, are educational guide trips, not load the boat guide trips.
So that is exactly what Fish Tips is. It is a scalable educational revenue source for guides, and that's just where it's at. So the whole information thing, I'm like, yes, pros shouldn't be buying information. There's really no need to, because, by the way, like, dude, every freaking little kick out on Lake Murray has a brush pile or a hard rock spot. Corey Johnson said it, dude. There's no secrets. They don't have any more secrets in the Great Lakes.
So hold on. So it was interesting what you're talking about here, that it's done. So like, if I pull this up, I just literally typed Oklahoma fishing guide into Google. Yep. So like, there's like Travel OK, the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife, Fishing Booker, but then you go down and then there's like Hawker's Guide Service and Lance's Guide Trips and BNC Fishing Adventures. So most likely these are guys who have their search engine optimization down, who like kind of understand what the vast majority of people booking guide trips are. I would assume a lot of those have to be striper guides on Texoma, because that's got to be probably one of the top 5 most competitive guiding things in the country, is guiding for striper on Texoma. But it's interesting. I'd never just done like very basic general searches like that. And I mean, these guys have their search engines optimized.
Yeah, that's right. So, and once again, that's where Fish Tips is. We are trying to help guys scale their businesses, grow their guide businesses. And, just, dude, it's a grind to make a living in the fishing industry. And if we can be a resource that helps them, and it makes financial sense for them and financial sense for us, that's where we meet in the middle. It's capitalism, baby.
Yeah. Oh, why is it no surprise that when I do bass fishing podcasts, Chris and Trait have everything freaking optimized? Look at that. They've been around since October of 2022, but it's the bilge. They were serious angler.
They were serious angler.
Yeah, they got tons of stuff out there.
Yeah.
I've never even, what is Bass Juice?
I'm familiar with The Juice, the boys in Texas, but I'm not familiar with Bass Juice.
Oh, Bass Fishing HQ. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah, there you go. That's Ty Berger.
Okay. Yeah, that's Tyler Berger. Okay. That's just like a sub deal. He's optimized as well. Tyler Berger, big time.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, we have to, as an industry, continue to realize, like, everybody is up in arms about the live scope this, live scope that. I mean, the other day on one of my videos, I was like using it with my wife, and they're like, oh, it's great video, but you were using the cheater scope. And I'm like, dude, nothing about it's cheating. If they ban it and make it illegal in a state, then I will take it off my boat. But it wasn't called that before your boy RB started.
I know. I had him on that mega show, and as soon as he said it, I was like, dang it. I had that in the notes that on BTL, it needs to be referred to as forward-facing sonar or live scope. And on your own channel where you do it, you can refer to it as the cheater box or spotlighting or the umbilical cord or whatever. I was like, I said that on the show. I was like, but on BTL, live scope, forward-facing sonar, then you can attach your own connotation to it on your channel.
Yeah. But anyways, we need to realize that there's 49 million anglers out there that all fish for different reasons, for different species, with different equipment, with different skill levels, different bodies of water. And, ultimately what we're trying to create is just the hub for fishing information across the board. And so that's the future. That's the future of guiding. And in a world, like I said, dude, it's hard to innovate in 2024. I told Molly last night after another GoPro of mine died, she's like, if you had $1 million right now, what would you do? And I said, I might invest it in a freaking action camera company. But once again, it's so hard to innovate. It's so hard to get things done. It's everything's saturated. Dude, I had to rebrand from Dream Catchers, which by the way is a great name for fishing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, how do I rebrand? And people are like, well, I don't know what it's called when it's like Billy Bob's Bass, when everything starts with the same letter. That's, that'll
an alliteration.
An alliteration. Okay. So I'm like, okay, so I can try an alliteration, something with meaning or something that rhymes. And I'm like, I'm going with Frost and Austin because I'm sweet and white. I don't know.
There you go. Dude, we covered a lot in this, but I think this is probably the most educational guide day that I had. It kind of pulls the curtain back on what a lot of people who just, when they're looking for a guide, don't understand all of the subtleties, nuances, what goes in behind it when they jump in a boat with the guy, what went in to them just being able to get in the boat with someone who does this for a living, go out and catch bass and realize, hey, there's a lot of time, energy, money, mental, physical with this guy that they're getting in the boat with, or girl that they're getting in the boat with. A lot of great female guides out there as well.
100%, man. Yeah. Like I said, that's where I'm passionate about. I've always been very passionate about business. I've always been passionate about fishing. And, I think that's the one thing the industry struggles on is the whole business side of it, so that's where I care about dudes individually. And want to see, I think there is actually a world where a lot of people can win. Not everybody can win, but a lot of people can win. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, if someone wins, there has to be losers. I mean, that's just competition, and that's just life. Like if everybody won and was successful at what they did, but
but back to guiding niche markets,
technology, that's what I said. That's your recipe for success. And right now, I mean, you're kind of traveling around the country working with a bunch of guys, trying to put them in better financial and mental states as they try to make a living helping other people cast and catch.
That's right. That's what it's about, man.
Dude, I'm glad you reached out for this episode. Like I said, I wasn't exactly sure it was going to go. It's not like hey, here I am, and here's how you can go catch shoal bass. But I think after having a dozen of these things under the belt, I think I do need to have like kind of a behind the curtain episode every now and then, because I really enjoyed that. A lot of things that you talked about that I didn't even think of, or that I guess I had never voiced. Because, dude, like almost all my friends who are in it I've got so many friends that guide, whether it's they do it a little bit, they do it a lot. It's the only thing they've done. They used to do it and they got out of it, and they are so happy they got out of it and they miss it and they went back to it. Like, dude, there's so many guys in this industry that have helped other people catch fish and gotten paid for it. So anything else you want to get in here, Austin?
Man, no, I appreciate it so much, and just thankful for the opportunity. I just want to encourage you, man, keep doing your thing. It's so great. I think at the end of the day, thinking is a lost art in our society. And I think your podcast tends to promote a lot of deep thinking, critical thinking, and great conversations and opinions, which are valuable to, people formulating great opinions. So
thank you. What is your, I don't know if you need coffee. You're always kind of wired up a little bit. I'm not going to lie, but what is your caffeinated, like your coffee shop drink of choice?
Molly every morning makes me Black Rifle coffee, and then she puts something French vanilla in it because I'm a pansy.
Wait, so you brought your own coffee to the coffee shop to use the Wi-Fi?
No. So kind of, but I am going to get a refill.
Okay.
I told Molly, because the other day, she's like, hey, I saw you, like, you'd spend some money in the coffee shop. I'm like, yeah. She goes, we have food here. And I'm like, Molly, I'm using their service. Like, I have to support their business if I'm going to sit and use their internet. Like, that's how it works.
It's kind of like following you around on a guide trip, and you're going like, hey man, like, I'm trying to make a living here. They're doing the same thing. You got the shadow mode.
Yeah, that's right. So anyways, they're about to get a lunch order right now and a refill on some coffee. So, but
fantastic. All right. Austin Neary with Fish Tips, former owner of Dreamcatcher's Guide Service. Check him out on all the social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all that. And looking forward to seeing what we have coming from you in the future.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, Matt. Keep it up.
Thank you. All right. That was an interesting one. Like I said, I wasn't exactly sure where that one was going to go. A lot of great information there as you decide how you want to do your next trip, whether it's a Fish Tips deal and you figure it out on your own, whether it's hiring a guide, but a lot of kind of honest talk behind the curtain there. So, all right, this has been another edition of Day 5 Guide Day. We'll be back Monday, live show 8:30 a.m. Central Time. We will talk to everybody then.
Omnia Pro gives you the confidence to eliminate dead water on thousands of lakes across the U.S. Exclusively through Omnia, utilize our map layers containing critical real-time satellite information to see water temperature, water clarity, and important weather data all in one place, along with 1-foot contours for Navionics and detailed CMAP social mapping. Matched with Omnia's industry-leading loyalty credit program on all your tackle and gear needs, this is the only app you need in your arsenal for success on the water.